everyone, Brian Zane here from Wrestling with Regret. I am joined by my WCWC broadcast partner, Blake Chadwick. For the first time, he and I are going to be breaking down a show, a particular show. You might have heard of it. It happened over this last weekend. A little something called All In, only the biggest independent show of our lifetimes. Blake, you and I watched this in our hotel last night with a bunch of fellow colleagues in the business.
Indeed.
And so, what were you? Just give me your thoughts on this instant.
Well, certainly the fact that we're talking about the biggest professional wrestling event in the United States that's not affiliated with the WWE in the 2000s, pretty much. I mean, you know, the dying days of WCW, there were some solid houses, but rarely did you enter the five figures. Rarely did you see a 10,000 plus. And last night, All In was All In, as they did everything that you could imagine. They delivered on every single level. They catered to the fans of independent wrestling, and Brian, I couldn't have expected it to go much better than it did.
I mean, you just look at the fact of what they had and how they promoted and hyped and marketed this thing. You know, the market clearly was looking for something like this. How fast it sold out and all the hype surrounding it, the build with being the elite and all incoming and 10 pounds of gold, all these things coinciding together kind of turned into one perfect, harmonious thing. And I've never seen in the days before and in the moments after, have I ever seen and felt this level of like hope and optimism, not just among like fans of wrestling, but also people in the business, for like what the future holds for independent wrestling.
Absolutely. It gives independent wrestling a fresh new coat of paint. I mean, it pretty much puts independent wrestling on a different platform. When you're drawing 10,000 plus, when you have it on a platform like Fight TV that you can watch all over the world, and again, some of those other things that you mentioned, like Being the Elite, the 10 Pounds of Gold series from the NWA, those types of things allowed fans to really follow this journey and then join everybody last night at the Sears Center in Chicago. And I think something is very important to point out. You talked about Being the Elite, 10 Pounds of Gold from the NWA, you know, all the lead up to All In. None of that was on television.
Right.
And I think that's very key to look at here in 2018. You can have success in media, in professional wrestling, without being on a national outlet. We did see the pre-show on WGN America last night. Very well produced.
The giant expanded commercial for ProWrestlingTees.com is essentially what it was, but there were some good matches in there too.
Indeed, and we enjoyed some of that. In fact, a couple of the guys that we were with had their own little cameos in that commercial there. So it was pretty cool to be able to see that. And again, just seeing independent wrestling on a scale when you're looking at a crowd normally, and that type of fan, your smart fan, usually maybe 10, 15, 20% of the audience, 95% plus last night, filling the Sears Center, and as we said, All In pretty much delivered as expected.
Yeah, let's talk about the show from the pre-show on. We're not going to do like a blow-by-blow breakdown. If you want, you can watch the show yourself. Go order it on pay-per-view. But yeah, and this is coming from two people who honestly didn't really study all the Being in the Elites and all the 10 Pounds of Gold. So some matches, as far as like build, we're going to go into blind. We'll just give you our thoughts about the matches themselves. But let's talk first about just the set. I thought it was kind of cool. I like that the Bullet Club was this omnipresent thing. Their logo was there the entire time because you know who's bankrolling this thing essentially.
Absolutely. It was all about Cody. It was all about Matt and Nick Jackson, and of course throwing Marty Scurll, throwing Hangman Page, and the Bullet Club put on an incredible event. As we discussed last night, it was kind of a hybrid of New Japan Pro Wrestling mixed with In Your House Degeneration X.
It was kind of
had that hybrid feel to it, but it was a big set, big entrance, big environment.
They had pyro.
And
WWE hasn't had pyro.
They had a modicum of pyro. And again, I mean, you're just looking at a situation where it just felt like a very big event.
Yeah, and like that pre-show, you had like the opening with Cody and the Bucks. Bring out the pyro, throw out the t-shirts out. Road Warrior Animal rolls by on a motorcycle.
How appropriate in Chicago.
Exactly. And then you've got the opening tag match with SoCal Uncensored versus the Briscoe brothers. I won't say much about the match. It was a very solid, entertaining opener, but I popped for the fact that it's the first time I've ever heard the word hypotenuse used in a wrestling program to describe the midpoint of the ring. That's something you would hear, Broken Matt Hardy say at some point, but no, Ian Riccoboni beat him to it.
Yeah, and Ian a little bit better.
I forget, it was just he or Don.
He's a little bit better with the geometry than I am, but he still did pull out an interesting phrase there. They went about 20 minutes or so. They set the pace, and again, this was not a Ring of Honor show, but it's very Ring of Honor heavy. And when you have a team like Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian taking on the Briscoe brothers, you expect them to deliver. It's exactly what they did. I thought it was a very creative finish, and I really liked the fact that they were able to go up there, SoCal Uncensored, setting the pace.
What about the Battle Royal? First off, how many people in the Battle Royal had the special custom all-in themed gear? I counted at least 4 or 5. There was Colt, there was Jordan Grace. I'm trying to think. Ethan Page had the All Ego. There were a few people who definitely commemorated the occasion with some custom gear, and it was all congregated there in the Battle Royal. They knew that was their one shot. Some things that stuck out to me in that show, like Jordan Grace, I think in the build to it and in the aftermath was one of the top stories. Just the hype of Jordan Grace, the potential of challenging for the Ring of Honor World Championship. She got one big breakout moment where she deadlifted Brian Cage. Yep. The one problem with that was she wasn't facing the hard cam. Some of the wrestlers on this show didn't really know how to work the hard cam, and that was kind of persistent with the whole thing. Not TV ready, brother. But no, I mean, that was kind of a nitpick, but that was her biggest moment of the year, probably. And it's funny because it's a perfect lead-in because I know she and Cage are going to be wrestling 101 for the first time for Beyond Wrestling later this month. So nice little tie-in, nice little preview. But yeah, there's some of that stuff. And then I think she sold for 3/4 of the match, too.
After the big dives on the outside, she was corpsing.
Inside the ring, just waiting for her stuff to come up. Then also Austin Gunn was kind of cool to see. I'd never seen him wrestle yet, but he moved just like his dad. Right on down to the way he moves, he just suck it and all that stuff. And he had the jabs and everything. I popped for that. Then there's Marco Stunt, the small child who's 21 years old but looks like he's 12, and he's just a spot machine. His breakout moment was during Janela's Lost in New York a couple weeks ago, and he had a moment to shine here, especially with Bully Ray, who was the bully. He was the spoiler for the whole match, throwing people out. And then, of course, you thought Colt was going to win, and he was the Chicago boy, but he gets eliminated. Then in comes Chico, I forget his full name now, Chico El Luchador or something. It's Rocky Romero's character, but instead he takes the mask off, and it's Flip, and that was a great resolution, because we've seen for months the whole story of Flip trying to get into the show somehow, and this was his way in.
Longtime fans of professional wrestling can see the build. They knew that Flip Gordon wouldn't be completely all out. You have to imagine he would have been involved in the show in some fashion. We discussed before the show, potentially could have been the guy to come in there and win the Battle Royal. Yeah. Maybe he was going to pull the Jimmy Hart under the ring.
Yeah, I think you called it.
Yeah, I didn't know how he was going to get involved, maybe a late run-in, whatever it was. But nonetheless, Flip Gordon, after being put through that table with a power bomb early on
in the first 10 seconds
by Bully Ray, laid out, completely taken out of the match, comes back, throws him over the top, unmasked, it's Flip Gordon, and to me, the perfect way to set the pace. Don't forget, that's on the pre-show, so if you haven't purchased the show yet, you now know you're going to be getting a Flip Gordon, Jay Lethal match for the ROH title. To me, the perfect way to set up the pay-per-view portion of the event.
I think just overall, and before we go into the details of the next matches, I think that just very smart booking. I mean, again, if you have some modicum of knowledge of what's going on with the storylines of the characters, I think they did a very good job with a lot of payoffs and a lot of just moments they had in this show that awesome. Flip getting his chance. He sneaks in the back door to get after months of trying. That's a great story. And Jordan Grace's moment to shine as well.
And I think the huge thing with Flip Gordon, we have to realize, again, go back. All of this played out on social media.
Yeah.
The whole Flip Gordon storyline, this is not on Ring of Honor television. This is not on New Japan. This is on no other outlet other than essentially being the elite. Mm-hmm. And you see that paid off. And the fact that 10,000 plus people in attendance, hundreds of thousands of others,
if not
more from around the world, understood exactly what happened, shows you the power that the Bullet Club and independent wrestling has through social media and other platforms.
Right. Let's move on to the first match of the official show. MJF, or MJF as Don Callis would call him. I laugh for that.
Multiple times the MJF.
He was consistent. Give him credit for that. Versus Matt Cross. This, I think, was a great coming out for MJF because he's been on the scene for a few years. He's really picking up momentum now as the current CCW champion. And I'm glad he was able to recover from his knee injury in time to be part of this show. He did great, I think. What a moment in his young career. Someone who's really on the rise to have that exposure opening with a guy like Matt Cross.
Absolutely. I mean, MJF, you talked about CZW, also the middleweight champion in Major League Wrestling. Right. He's really starting to break out on the scene. I think he's 23 years old.
22, they said.
22 years old, been around for a couple of years. He's got a very bright future ahead of him. Looked very confident in that ring. You can see a lot building there with MJF. And I think the veteran Matt Cross, giving him the nod in that opening contest, I thought that was a great pairing. And they went out there and delivered it and kept the crowd crowd moving.
They made each other look very good. And of course, Cross would win with the shooting star press. And then this match was, I think, far exceeded my expectations. Christopher Daniels versus Stephen Amell of Arrow fame, Cody Rhodes' co-star on the show. There's some things I was wondering, why was Jerry Lynn the referee? I guess just to bring him out and just to get a pop because it's Jerry Lynn. And also, John Mayer is all that we found out. He was in the front row. I think he was the big celebrity that you saw.
Right.
The celebrity sighting in the front row. So John Mayer being there was pretty cool. There was one line that Ian said on commentary. I keep forgetting if it was Ian or Don. It was pretty noisy in the room, so I had a hard time.
It was, and sometimes their voices kind of blended together a little bit.
Yeah. But one of them made a call saying, "So is he a great actor or a great professional wrestler?" And I'm like, can't he be both? Like, isn't it kind of the same thing to be a good actor who's also be a good professional wrestler? Because I mean, for someone who's not experienced, who hasn't paid his dues, this is the third match I think now.
Yeah.
He carried himself like a wrestler. He trained to look the part, and Daniels carried him through it, and they had a great showing. I mean, was it match of the night? No, but I mean, Amell carried himself. I don't think he botched anything. Did you notice anything?
Not anything significant. And again, when you're talking about placement on the card, I think number 2 is perfect.
Yeah.
You have him right after that high spot opener. And again, you're talking about a guy that's only had a handful of professional wrestling matches. The first one being at SummerSlam. So we're talking about some
debut, kid.
Very high-profile matches. He looked to be in incredible shape. Mm-hmm. He threw out a couple of big-time high spots in there.
The big dive off the top, through the table on the floor where Daniels gets out of the way.
His elbow's got to be hurting today.
All I will say is that Stephen Amell has the chillest agent of all time to allow him to let him do stuff like this.
If only The Rock had his agent.
I know, especially in those first few years when he went out to do Hollywood stuff. Then Jerry Lynn, he wouldn't count Stephen Amell out, and Daniels gets pissed. He and Lynn have a shoving thing. Lynn takes the shirt off and all that stuff. Then Amell, he puts up this valiant fight. He just gets beat for a while after that table spot, but he keeps kicking out. And then finally, Daniels puts him away with the BME. I think as far as singles matches involving celebrities go, and the sample size is short. Off the top of my head, there's the LT match at WrestleMania 11. There's Floyd Mayweather at WrestleMania 24. I think what else is really out there, but probably ranks up there as one of the, if not the best, celebrity-involved singles match.
And we're gonna keep Pac-Man Jones and Ron Killing's TNA tag team
match
out of it because he didn't enter the ring,
right.
So he's not really qualified in this situation. But yeah, Stephen Amell went out there and multiple times throughout that match, I have to imagine we thought that. Or we lost sight of the fact that he's not a regular professional wrestler. I mean, he's not a full-time guy. But that also goes back to really how skilled and talented Christopher Daniels is.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the most underrated over the last couple of decades. Mm-hmm. One of the premier independent wrestlers of all time. Christopher Daniels certainly can deliver, and they did. I mean, to me, there's a couple of spots where maybe Amell was a little slower getting to because of his lack of experience, but you had 2 veterans in there, and Lynn, the referee, and of course Daniels' opponent.
That's actually a very good point.
They covered very well.
That's a very good point because I said at the top of this question, why was Jerry Lynn there? Maybe he was there to also help guide him along.
Indeed.
Because the referee is also a very vital part of every match.
Absolutely.
So to have 2 veterans like Daniels and Lynn there is great. Moving on, the women's 4-way: Britt Baker, Chelsea Green, Madison Rayne, Tessa Blanchard. Of the 4, I think 3 of them had very memorable entrances. You had Britt Baker, the dentist,
right,
and then you've got Chelsea Green doing the split personality as herself, and as Laurel Van Ness was a nice touch, very Roddy Piper WrestleMania 6.
Yeah, taking a page out of Piper's playbook, but I have to imagine the makeup came off today.
Probably. Yeah. Things that it took a long time. And then there's Tessa Blanchard, who got to hug her father, Tully Blanchard, and her stepdad, Magnum TA. Who do you think's winning that matchup? She's not, because Chelsea Green didn't get to hug her dad on the way out of the ring, so it was all Tessa Blanchard.
And when you have that lineage there, and personally, I mean, not a lot of people know this. I talked about it in the room last night. Magnum TA, someone that I do correspond with on a semi-regular basis. We actually went to the same high school, obviously different classes, but he is a legend in Virginia. That's where I'm from, and he's a guy, again, if you followed his career, he could have been and should have been the next big thing in the 80s in terms of a big-time baby face. Mm-hmm. And Magnum TA, Tully Blanchard, their wars, the fact that they're intertwined now, familial with Tessa Blanchard, and seeing her break out last night or continue to break out, it was a great moment, especially because you have to look at this whole event. It's essentially Dusty to Cody.
Yep.
And then you look at it there, the 80s basically all the way to now. It's that lineage, that passing of the torch. I thought you saw it with the women. It was the only women's match on the card, and I thought they went out there. To me, it wasn't a huge spot. I liked a few other matches better, but I think all 4 went out there, delivered, and showed their stars.
Did you think it was awkward that Emma was part of the commentary team involving a match with someone who was currently dating her ex-boyfriend, Zack Ryder? They even had a spot where Chelsea does the Ryder woo-woo boot thing. I mean, come on, that had to be awkward.
Yeah, the subtlety subtleties there for those of us in the know certainly were pretty interesting. But again, I mean, looking at every woman in that match, they all have a tie to some male star in the professional wrestling business in some way, shape, or form.
And Britt Baker, of course, with Adam Cole. And all that.
Can't forget about our colleague, Josh Matthews, of course, married to Madison Rayne. But I look at that match as, you know, you have some up-and-comers. You got a veteran there in Madison Rayne. You've got Britt Baker, who had her first real appearance. Yeah. Which obviously had some NXT
Her
matches.
highest profile appearance, I would say.
Absolutely. And, yeah, I thought all 4 women went out there, did what they needed to do, and I think the right person went over.
But then, you know, Tessa wins with the Hammerlock DDT, which, again, kind of underwhelming compared to a Destroyer, and she wins. But, yeah, I think, you know, great overall match. What a spotlight for these 4 women, especially Tessa Blanchard, who is on the rise. I think she and Green, to me, were the breakout stars in that matchup.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think in the midst of this women's revolution, specifically within the WWE, it shows there is a lot of talent out there on the female side still not under contract.
So the NWA World's Championship match is up next. What a show when that's like the 4th match on the card, the halfway point. Cody versus Nick Aldis. God, I had all the feels in this. I legit like teared up seeing Cody's. I'm actually getting over something about it now.
Yeah.
Just like seeing Cody come out there and just the love that the fans had for him. Just knowing because he is the symbol. He is the figurehead of All In and what it represents. And so for him to come out with his posse with DDP and Glacier and
Dreamer,
and Tommy Dreamer and Brandy and Pharaoh the dog got a pop as well. To have them all come out there and just like for the world there and the people of the Sears Center to shower him with that love and appreciation was just so cool to see. And, you know, not taking anything from Aldis, who had his own posse of, you know, Daivari and Jarrett and Sam Shaw and was it Storm? Yeah, was that one of them? Yeah, and Tim Storm.
Tim Storm was there, right?
Yeah, this was like a big, like, kind of nostalgia fest when you think about Cody's lineage to Dusty, Earl Hebner's the referee, all the other people from the past, the legends accompanying each man to the ring. This was just like, it was a celebration of the past and the present and future of wrestling.
And the ties that DDP, Tommy Dreamer, and of course Glacier all had to Dusty Rhodes, some of his best friends. And even if you took Cody out of the equation, the power of the 10 pounds of gold. I mean, it's one of those things that you forget about for a long time. And as a longtime wrestling fan, growing up in an NWA territory, growing up in the Flair, Steamboat, Sting feuds, you know, all those eras, Dusty Rhodes, I mean, those guys really put it on the map. And then to see it come back to prominence. I mean, we've had shades here and there. Obviously, Adam Pearce did a lot of great things with the NWA World title.
Yes.
You can go back even before that into the mid-'90s. I mean, Barry Windham, a pretty solid NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. But the title did not mean as much as it now does once again.
Yeah.
And I think last night, the fact that Cody Rhodes won that title, becomes the first ever father-son combo to hold the championship, of course, with the American Dream. I have to imagine, even though Dream held the title 3 times, very short reigns each and every time, kind of transitioning back and forth.
Yeah.
I think this is a reign set to last a long time, and I think Cody Rhodes is about to usher in a new era for the NWA and put that company and that championship right back on the map.
You know, in a recent episode of 10 Pounds of Gold, they used a clip of my video talking about when Billy Corgan bought the NWA, and I was kind of snarky about it. I didn't think it was going to fail. I wasn't as naysaying as others were, but I was like, who's Tim Storm? Da-da-da. And, like, you know, I said in that video, what they need to do is make this belt relevant to modern fans. And right now, you can't get more relevant than put it on who is arguably the hottest name on the indie scene today in Cody Rhodes. The story writes itself. Father to son, the son kind of finishing what the father started. The match itself, I think, was really well done. The booking of him, you know, eating shit on the outside with the elbow on his way out.
Yeah.
And he's bleeding. DDP comes in to check on him. Daivari gets involved. Diamond Cutter. DDP comes right back. Are you okay, man? He just, as if nothing happened, it was a great moment of DDP, like, hitting Daivari and going back to Cody. And then, you know, there's the crossroads. Actually, no, and Brandy taking the bullet.
Oh, yeah.
The big elbow drop from Aldis. That was crazy. Aldis kicks out of the crossroads, but then he gets stacked on top with the sunset flip attempt.
Right.
So it's a classic kind of old school ending to have not end on a finish per se or finisher, but to end on a roll up.
Taking a page right out of the Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith playbook from SummerSlam '92, goes for the sunset flip. Cody drops down the 1, 2, 3, and the emotion that immediately filled that arena. And you can see it overtake Cody because it's one of those things that he's always, over the last couple of years since he left WWE, has really tried to forge his own identity.
Yeah.
He wanted to become his own man, but you can see how much it meant to him to become the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion last night, and I'm very interested to see what he does next with that title, because for the first time you know, you could take it back to the TNA days of it, the early TNA days when the NWA title was involved, but you could even take it back all the way to the early 90s when Flair and Sting were the champion.
Yep.
This is the time for the NWA title to rise again into prominence. And again, I think the most important thing last night with that title, big fight feel right in the middle of the card. And to me, even though there's a lot of other big things that went on last night, to me, nothing felt bigger than the NWA title match.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy because, you know, there's some people out there, kind of snarky people who are like, oh, Cody booked his own show, he booked his own title win. At the same time, though, that belt is more Billy Corgan's than it is Cody Rhodes. And if you're Corgan, you'd be dumb to you know, like, to not give it to the hottest hand in wrestling right now. And also, give fair credit to Nick Aldis. We haven't talked enough about him. He's done a great job being this, like, you know...
Well, he was the transition.
Yeah, but he was a great villain character, a great foil for Cody, and I think he did amazing in the build and amazing in the match itself.
I mean, you look at Tim Storm, he was the guy that kind of restarted the NWA, had that kind of older look, you know, that different
He represented the old guard.
And then you see Aldis knock him off, kind of reintroduce the title, goes on a conquest, 20 defenses in 20 days, brings it around the world, defending it against all comers, and then you build the match with Cody. To me, it's a perfectly done scenario, and now you're talking about an NWA title where Cody Rhodes is now going to have it, and we don't know what's coming next. Will it be on Ring of Honor television? Will it be on New Japan television? It's 2018, Brian. Anything could happen.
The possibilities are endless. Let's move on to the match that followed this, and they had the unfortunate decision trying to follow it. The Chicago Street Fight, Hangman Page and Joey Janela, the cameo appearance by the Cracker Barrel, which was described in commentary as 200 pounds of wood and steel. I'm pretty sure barrels don't weigh 200 on their own. There has to be stuff in there, but I love the fact that Page just pulled a jump man, an old school Mario, and jumped
right
the
for
barrel
the Mario kart,
as it was going through that. This was just a violent matchup, like a burning hammer onto the ladder, onto Janela.
And the ladder fell on him.
Hard to watch. Then you've got, you know, Penelope Ford getting involved with some.
I thought she looked great.
She was great in that spot with a stunner into the cross body, and then Janelle falls right up with an elbow from the top onto Hangman.
And Janela's probably one of the few guys on this card, even for people that consistently keep up with wrestling, that might have gotten their introduction, just like Britt Baker last night. You know, not too familiar with them. But to me, Penelope Ford, a breakout performance, to me, had a little Lita feel to her. And I could really see her becoming a huge star here in the next year or two.
How about that running powerbomb Page did off the ramp into the lower part of the entrance? There's supposed to be 2 tables, but Janelle barely got one of them. Ooh, that was hard to watch. That was probably the cringiest moment for me in that match, is how they shorted it.
I agree.
There's the boots in the garbage bag. Again, we haven't watched Being the Elite. We know that Hangman Page admitted to murdering Joey Ryan. So I don't know what the relevance and significance of the boots are. I'm sure y'all in the comment section will tell me. But that was part of the story as well. And then on top of the ladder, Page beats Janela with a phone. Again, I'm sure there's context to that. But then there's the rite of passage off the top through the tables. How could you kick out of that? That's the finish. And that was a very, very entertaining match. I thought that was the come-down match. I was wrong, and I'll get to that in a second. But then you've got, afterward, then this is what honestly got the biggest pop out of me. The return of Joey Ryan from the dead. The Dick Druids, the Phalanx of Phalluses, what was it? I wrote it down here, the Cavalcade of Cocks. God, that was like his WrestleMania
Rest
moment.
in penis.
Rest in penis chant. That was amazing to see Joey Ryan come back and do the whole dick entrance. Some people are going to be pissed about it. Jim Cornette, I know, is one of them. I've seen him on Twitter today talk about it.
Damn.
But God, that was just such a great way to kind of like add some levity to the moment of after this ultra violent match we saw, and to have Joey Ryan come out with this parade of dudes and dicks. Years from now, some main eventer is going to say, I was one of the dudes and the dicks.
You know, I was trying to spot one of the dicks. I mean, we've seen CM Punk. We've seen some big stars.
He led John Cena to the ring once at WrestleMania 23.
We've seen a handful of stars from, that are current stars in the past and their extra work. Big cameos there. You know, WrestleMania Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, and Sasha Banks. We've seen all that kind of stuff. I thought that was a great way to kind of add a come down spot without having to have a match. And I thought that was a good way there to give it that big feel. I mean, essentially, this is the independent wrestling WrestleMania.
Yes.
And they went out there and gave Joey Ryan the Undertaker treatment.
And the purple lighting and everything.
And, you know, it's, again, I don't necessarily follow Being the Elite. I don't know exactly what this angle was all about, but it was easy to follow. You were able to kind of catch it from the video package. And I think it set it up well. And again, you know, Joey Ryan, he's embraced this role that he has. I think he knows that, you know, this is who he is now. and he's doing everything he can with it.
He's probably the smartest man in wrestling. He doesn't have to take that many bumps anymore and just do the dick flip and he gets paid. And he sells tons of merch, so how can you beat that? So now, Blake, to me, this one felt like the real come-down match because I don't think the fans were as into it as the previous match and, of course, Cody and Nick. However, I mean, there's still a lot to talk about with this one. You know, Jay Lethal defending the ROH title against Flip Gordon, getting the endorsement from Lanny Poffo, coming out with the Macho Man jacket. Yeah, what a feeling that must have been.
Doesn't get much better than that. Obviously, for years we've known the admiration Jay Lethal's had for the late great Randy Savage, and of course you can go back to his TNA days, Black Machismo, not even just that, but the Ric Flair impressions. I mean, Jay Lethal clearly knows how to mimic the legends.
Someone in the room we were watching with actually said he should have done a Ric Flair thing instead of a Macho Man thing. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but I think the Macho Man thing was a great tribute. Lanny being there was great as well. At one point in the match, Lethal loses some of the madness, and Poffo gets on the apron and slaps it back into him.
And what about with Brandy coming out there with Flip Gordon?
Yeah.
And basically making her as Miss Elizabeth.
That was kind of the case at one point. Yeah, there was kind of the Elizabeth thing happening there. That was, yeah, there was great stuff involved in the match. The wrestling itself was great. The match itself was very solid.
Well, the thing that I really enjoyed about this match is, looking at it as a knowledgeable wrestling fan, you had very little reason to think Jay Lethal's losing the Ring of Honor Championship at All In. I mean, it seemed like if one title was going to change hands, it would have been Cody winning the NWA World's Heavyweight title. So coming in, you kind of knew whoever won the Battle Royal probably wasn't going to knock off Lethal, but they kept us engaged. They kept us entertained for 15 or 20 minutes. They gave us the Black Machismo stuff. To me, they added the proper bells and whistles with Poffo, Black Machismo, and of course Flip Gordon getting his payoff. To me, it was a perfect situation. And Flip Gordon, again, a great performance. And this is a guy, to me, only a few years in the business. Look out for him in the next year or two to really break out.
By the end, it felt kind of overbooked because you did have the issue with Poffo and Brandy out there. And then you've got, after Lethal wins, you've got Bully Ray coming out to be more of a dick again. Beating both guys up. Then Colt Cabana comes out to even the odds. And then they do the Shield powerbomb, and you even hear the fans go, ooh, ah, with it. So it's like, hey, people can't really hate Roman that much if they're doing that chant for the triple powerbomb.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
It was a great way to close out the segment, ultimately. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a nice, this match to me felt like the palate cleanser, moving on to the rest of the triple header main event.
I agree.
Between, NWA title and then to this point, ROH title. Kenny Omega taking on Pentagon Jr. / Penta El Zero M. I guess depending on...
Kind of floated back and forth all night.
I guess depending if it's in print or it has to be spoken verbally, the rules are different for his name. I'm still kind of feeling that process.
It seems like print, it has to be Penta El Zero.
Yeah, but people call him Pentagon Jr. during the show. Omega got Pyro. I thought that was kind of cool. Very hard hitting on both sides. If you're familiar with either of these guys' work, you know what to expect. And I've said before in my New Japan reviews how repetitive the V-trigger gets. I mean, when he does 8 or 10 of them in a match, it kind of loses the magic.
I agree.
There's the fear factor on the apron. How did Kenny survive that?
Yeah.
And then Kenny hit one of his own in the ring and planted Penta really well. And then Penta another one in the ring. There was definitely people spamming with some of their biggest moves in this matchup here. But these two just kind of give off this air of invincibility in the match. But then after a while, Penta works the arm of Kenny. Does that arm snap thing. That was brutal. But Kenny hits the one-winged angel, even with the bum arm, to win the match. Very solid matchup, great entertaining stuff. But the real story here is after the match. The lights go out. Penta, and then the lights come back up. Pentagon Jr. gets up, starts beating up Kenny. Oh, but is it Penta? No, it's Chris Jericho, who's wearing his 4th or 5th elaborate makeup job of the year, I think.
So another page out of the Undertaker playbook.
Yes, exactly. That was just really cool to see Jericho come out there and jump Kenny Omega. The feud between them still not over. Reignited now. Now you're going to have champion versus champion, it seems. IWGP Heavyweight versus Intercontinental Champion. That's going to be a big clash. And that's what's great about this show is because there was not one agency that was overseeing this thing, you have a lot of leeway to see where angles can go. You can do Ring of Honor stuff, you can do New Japan stuff, and you can have stuff just on YouTube and Being the Elite, and they're kind of a floating entity. So this is a great jumping off point for a New Japan storyline.
Absolutely. I mean, we just talked about Bully Ray and Colt Cabana. That's paying off stuff we've seen on ROH TV.
Yes.
And then you obviously have this situation building off the last 9-10 months of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I think seeing that we're now in the beginning of September, we're just about 4 months away from Wrestle Kingdom.
Good build to that.
Does not seem out of the realm of possibility. Intercontinental Champion versus Heavyweight Champion Omega and Jericho once again coming up at Wrestle Kingdom, and to me that would be a fine build. We know we're going to see them on the Jericho Cruise.
Yes, they bring up.
But I have to imagine this might spill over to the Far East. Jericho once again showing why Not trying to take a page out of his playbook, but showing why he very well could be the best in the world.
He's the GOAT. Up next, the semi-main was Marty Scurll, the villain of the Bullet Club, versus Kazuchika Okada. This was kind of a dream match scenario. I think Okada was really the only real true blue New Japan star who was booked for this show, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess unless you count Omega.
If you count Omega. Tiger Hattori was the special referee for this matchup here. One thing that confused me, and I'm sure people will explain this to me in the comment section, was Marty Scurll's pre-entrance skit he did backstage with the hands pointing at him, and he breaks the breaking the fingers. I get,
right?
But what were these two voices trying to represent? Because like one of them was named Art. It was like somewhere. Was it supposed to be like a representation of the internet, like Bash and Scurll? I just didn't get that.
I was a little confused as well. Of course, we know the finger breaking. That's obviously Marty Scurll's shtick. And the crowd seemed to be into it as a little levity before this big match. But again, you're talking about one of the better junior heavyweights in the world taking on arguably the best heavyweight in the world in Kazuchika Okada. And I thought it was a fine representation of pretty much all the styles. I mean, you got Ring of Honor, you've got some European, you've got some Japanese style. I mean, to me, it was a great match to kind of bring everything together. And again, a high-profile spot for one of the featured guys on the card in Marty Scurll.
It was a lovely little gumbo. Like you said, it was the great styles merging together here to create a very excellent matchup here. One thing that took me out of it for a bit, and you and I talked about this, as people who do commentary pretty frequently, for Ian and Don to be doing the insider lingo and saying kayfabe, and for Don to be speaking carny, I'm like, come on, guys. It's like we try really hard to bring in this kind of air of professionalism, and I get you're having fun, and I guess you can get away with it because of who you are. But
and it's an indie show.
And it's an indie show.
I think
so it caters to the smart fans who know that stuff.
I was kind of thinking about it a little bit more this morning, kind of after I woke up the day after, and I was thinking the reason they went that route is because it was a different kind of show. And while it still felt a little uncomfortable, I think they were I think Cody, the Bucks probably just said, listen, this is for the smart guys. Cater to him.
Yep. So yeah, that was a bit of a distraction with that. But no, I mean there was good back and forth in this matchup. There was a couple of chicken wing attempts by Scurll, a couple of Rainmaker attempts, one of which by Scurll, which that was great. He actually hit him with the Rainmaker, but it was a kick out. And ultimately, Okada wins with 2 straight Rainmakers. I don't think there was one tombstone in that matchup. That's usually a setup. And so for Okada to not drop him with the tombstone beforehand, I thought was kind of surprising. But yeah, very good matchup to set you up for the main event, the 6-man tag, which was Young Bucks and Kota Ibushi versus Mysterio, Bandido, and Rafe Phoenix. I gotta admit, I think like the match order could have been a bit different. This match to me, like it was a great match. I don't know if it's main event worthy. I don't know if you would have put the NWA title on last, but I think they put the NWA title on earlier in the show because they didn't want to run the risk of people getting tired by the end of the show.
Agree.
And kind of muddling the emotional moment of Cody winning.
I mean, if you count the pre-show on WGN, 5 hours.
Yeah, it was lengthy. It's funny because people trash WWE all the time for their super long shows, but now that's the norm, and other shows are following that example. So, I mean, you've got shows like Wrestle Kingdom, and you've got shows like All In that are super long now because, like, WWE's kind of made it okay to have 5-hour shows. But you know, lots of first of all, pop for Mysterio's outfit, the Wolverine gimmick, that was choice. Lots of flippy lucha shit. I mean, you know these guys and what they're capable of. It was, it was the Super Kick Party versus Lucha Party essentially. It was a very high flying affair. I think Bandido is the one I was the least familiar with in this matchup.
Likewise.
But he really impressed me. His what was it, the backflip, fallaway slam, whatever the hell, like the backbreaker splash.
Oh, off the top, that was incredible.
That was amazing stuff. You could tell
Golden Triangle.
Yes, you could tell that they were really light on time, and they had to go home early because the super kicks felt a greater sense of urgency with the super kicks.
Oh, it did. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, because again, we had to watch this on delay, being on the West Coast, and of course having our tapings throughout the afternoon. I mean, we looked at it, I think there was maybe 12 or 13 minutes left while they were still doing the entrances.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were pretty much pressed for time. They squeezed it in. Did not have the main event feel, but it had Ibushi. It had the Bucks. Of course, it had Mysterio and likely his last high-profile appearance before he goes back to WWE.
Yep.
So, to me, it had a lot of big stars in Rafe Phoenix, now the AAA Mega Champion.
Yes.
So, it had some big international stars. Again, a nice collection of talent. And I think when you just look at the grand scope of things here at All In, I can't imagine many other people that could have been on this card that weren't.
Right. I think pretty much anyone who was unsigned was at this show, which really speaks to the the scope and the spectacle of All In. And by the way, the Bucks and Ibushi won with the Meltzer driver. Was there any doubt? And also, by the way, I forgot to mention this in the last match. Skrull was the only member of the Bullet Club who lost.
He did.
On Saturday. That was kind of surprising. I mean, I think ultimately, statistically, somebody had to lose in the Bullet Club. It would have been weird to have a clean sweep. I don't think there's anything to read into with that.
Right.
But it's, it's just a little anomaly, something I noticed. But overall, let's just talk about All In, and we are now all out. It was tiring experience, I will say, but overall, one of the most entertaining shows, indie or otherwise, I've seen in a very long time. They really had everything. There was high drama, there was emotion, there was love, as Ian mentioned on commentary for Cody's match. There was big high spots, there was ultra violence, but there was also levity, the humor with Joey Ryan.
Absolutely.
God, this had so much. And we said at the top of this review, amazing build and marketing and hype leading to an unprecedented anticipation level. I think it was made. I believe it really delivered. The match order itself, I wouldn't have given top marks for the match order. And by the end, I think...
Couple up for debate.
Yeah, and by the end, I think people were just tired. But I think it was overall just a great moment, a great event in the scope of wrestling.
And I think it was smart also. I mean, we talk about these long events. Pre-show starts at 6 p.m. Eastern. Main show starts at 7. They're still off the air by 11. And WWE...
And boy, they had to hit that time. Because as soon as the pinfall happened, they went right to the ending screen.
Exactly. And, WWE, some of their bigger events can stretch to 11:30. I mean, WrestleMania goes to midnight now. I mean, so it's one of those things where, if you have a longer event, starting it earlier is not the worst thing in the world. But again, I think this is a very historic event. Again, the largest independent wrestling event. I think we figured out since AAA When the Worlds Collide.
In LA
about 24 years ago. So again, historic event. Cody taking out of a page out of his father's playbook, being able to promote properly, showing it off in the ring as well. Now the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, and just looking at the rest of this card here, I think it was a very big thing. And you have to wonder, I mean, will there be a second All In? And a lot of that obviously depends on the contractual situation regarding Cody, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega, and all the rest of them coming up here. Contracts are due, potentially could go to the WWE. But even if this is a one-time thing, it definitely shows there is success in America, not labeled WWE.
Exactly. Like Billy Corgan said in 10 Pounds of Gold, the star, it's the giant starship, and that starship is fine, but there's a lot of stuff happening elsewhere, I guess, in the galaxy. I'm kind of paraphrasing his analogy. But yeah, overall, like I said at the top of this review, a great sense of optimism and positivity that I haven't felt and seen in the independent scene in quite some time. Because, like Cody says, Vince, WWE, does not own wrestling. We own wrestling. I think this was a great testament to that. My top things in the show overall, the Battle Royal was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Amell versus Daniels was a breath of fresh air. Cody's win that whole match and everything from start to finish, curtain to curtain, was great. Joey Ryan and the Dick Druids, I pop for that. I don't care what anyone says.
Absolutely.
That was pretty much, those are the high points for me. The only negative I had was, maybe the match order, the commentary times got a little too smart. But, what were your favorite points of the show?
I mean, to me, far and away, the NWA World's Heavyweight title match. I mean, a lot of emotion. I'm from Virginia, right out of the Mid-Atlantic region again. I mean, this is something that, I grew up on. And, to see that belt return to prominence under the Rhodes name and seeing some of those other stars out there like a DDP and a Dreamer and just some of the Jeff Jarrett, just it had a real big fight feel. And I think just seeing the NWA in that big fight feel presented like a real sport. I mean, it felt like an MMA or boxing exhibition. They went out there, they had an incredible match, they had blood, they had drama, a great finish, and to me it was the perfect storm to really have what the NWA needed in terms of a resurgence. Negatives, I tend to side on this with you there in terms of match order as well, and commentary again. I think I understand it more today, just thinking about the fact that it wasn't a major league event. It was kind of an independent event as is. But the match order, again, that's something that could have potentially been altered a little bit. I mean, in a perfect world, if the crowd's not going to die, I think you put the NWA title match at the end.
Yeah, but of course, what do we know? Because we didn't just sell out 10,000 people.
In less than 30 minutes.
Right.
So again, you have to tip your cap to them. And I'm very curious to see what comes next because the tickets are already sold for MSG. There's a chance some of those guys aren't under contract when we come around to WrestleMania season.
Yep.
So again, this not that it's going to be a one-off, but we might have reached the zenith, or we might just be getting started. Very curious to see what comes next, but again, a very exciting time in professional wrestling for fans and for us involved as well.
Exactly. Let me know what you guys thought about All In the comment section below. I'm really curious to know what you guys thought about it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go out of your way to do it. It's a very accessible, enjoyable show. I hope you guys check it out. So for Blake Chadwick, I'm Brian Zane. I'll see you next time.